Hey, you're
That's-
falling off.
Yeah, it's been that way since I got my car, because it's gone nowhere.
All signed 3 copies of this text.
We have enough people.
Not yet.
Katie, for sure. Moto is going to be late.
at this point. So reminder, the folks at home can hear us easily.
Otherwise, it's down to my.
Did anyone want to do public comment for the budget hearing or the regular board meeting? Because once we start the meeting,
That's what I was gonna ask, if we just.
here we go. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. We're just about to start. If you're going to do public comment for the budget hearing, it's this form. If it's the regular meeting, this form, they're the same. That's the best kind. Okay. Then you get to Miss Hannah. All right.
At 6,
I think we're ready.
Scott, at 6, am I picking this up?
6 o'clock. Folks, everybody rise, please. We'll do our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, will you pick up those 2 blue forms over there?
Katie. I like to clear your file. All sign. 3 copies.
Okay, are you ready for attendance?
Yes,
Moto Johnson,
you'll be here later.
Katie Johnston. Here. Diana Mendoza. Here. Nikki Pettit. Here. Joe Robinson.
Here.
Tyler Wilson.
Here.
John Brotherton.
And just to be clear, this is the budget amendment hearing part of the meeting. And now we need to approve the agenda.
Would like to make that motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second. Katie Johnston. Aye. Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
All right, this is the public forum on the budget amendment hearing. And this is where I also am supposed to say that we have a budget amendment that we have to do on occasion throughout the year. I'll be presenting more information about it later during the regular portion of the meeting. Did we have any public comment for this?
No second, no second.
So we have the.
We can move on. Yeah.
Action, adjournment of the.
Make a motion to adjourn the
Thank
amended
you.
budget hearing.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
All right.
Katie Johnston. Aye. Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye. Okay. I'll call to order. For the regular board meeting. You ready for that?
Mhm.
You gotta take a call for that.
Yep, I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. All right. Moto Johnson. Katie Johnston, Diana Mendoza, sorry. I'm not giving you time to say yes.
Here.
Katie Johnston.
Here.
Diana Mendoza, here. Nikki Pettit,
Here.
Joe Robinson,
Here.
Tyler Wilson,
Here.
John Brotherton.
Here.
Make a motion to approve the agenda, removing and correcting items as presented.
I'll second.
Katie Johnston.
Aye.
Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye. Public comments.
Did we have any signed up?
We don't have anybody signed up for public comments.
All right, we have the consent agenda items. We have the board meeting minutes, we have our regular financials, personnel report. The highlight I want to make sure to share, I've already shared this with the board. In this is the approval of DeAndre Henderson to serve as the director of the alternative program. I think it's called Director of Alternative Programs. And then we had some internal shifting. Deb Stevens, who's currently the assistant principal at Broadmeadow, will be moving to JW Ader as assistant principal, and Beth Waldhauser, who is currently assistant principal at Ader, will be moving to Broadmeadow. So those are just a couple of the personnel items to highlight. Donations and grants, Rotary Club of Rantoul donated $289. And that's to purchase supplies for the after-school program. The board is making a $100 contribution to the Randall City Schools Foundation on behalf of board member Joe Robinson's service to the district. You've got one more regular meeting. I'll schedule as many special meetings between now and then as we can get in.
Joe, no, we won't.
Increasing the credit card limit for Allison Didier from 5,000 to 10,000 and approving the district signatories for the Bank of Rand tool. And that is it for the consent agenda. Did I skip something? Yeah. Mr. Brotherton's name is spelled wrong in the agenda.
I
so
noted that
we
already.
will correct that for the
I
minutes.
did that just to tease me not to.
Well, the Bank of Rand tool might not let you sign a check.
And
Oh,
also,
they'll let me sign anything.
we have it as Katie Johnston, and it should probably be your full name, right? Okay. I did note that earlier.
Okay.
All right.
Guess we're moving to number 9.
Or we need to approve the consent agenda.
We need to-
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items, including personnel report as submitted with the stipulation that each individual is required to comply with all requirements for new hires as indicated in Illinois statute and RCS board policy and procedures, including ratification of bills prepaid by the financial manager under board policy 450.
I second it.
All right.
Okay, Katie Johnston. Aye. Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye. So we're moving to 11, is that right?
All right, the amended budget. So really, if you want to just look up at the screen there, you can see the highlights. So we have to amend the budget anytime a fund increases or decreases by 10%. Also, what we're really doing within these large funds, so for instance, the ed fund is $24 million. Within the ed fund, what's happening also is we're shifting within the fund to the correct accounts so that things balance correctly at the end of the year. So it's normal accounting. You can see the two top lines are the original revenues and the original expenditures, and where we were showing a surplus of 1.1 million. And then the amended budget is the revenues and expenditures, and we'll have a surplus of 897,000. The big thing to note, however, is the change in our revenues. We went from right at 36 million in revenues to right at 40 million in revenues. So what explains this? Part of it is what we claim over here in operations and maintenance. So that is 2.2 million of that. With the American Rescue Plan funds, it's only a revenue in our budget once we claim the money. So if we didn't claim that $2 million this year, we would end up claiming it next year. It's because we've had 3 full years to spend that money. And that's really just construction projects, things like that. We also had about $1 million in additional evidence-based funding that we were not aware of until we started working on the amended budget. This happened last year also. The state releases some additional revenue. And until we log in and look at the system, we don't know we're getting it yet. So that money, a lot of that went into transportation. We had significantly under budgeted transportation, and we were already over budget in transportation for the year. So we had to increase that. And you can see we increased that on revenues by 700,000. Some things to note too on the ed fund is we will very likely in the ed fund, which is our largest fund, come in with a significantly larger surplus than $84,000 because we have this continuing problem of unfilled teacher positions that we budget for them, but then we end up not paying salary for them. So we should have more. The negative in here, every time I see it, I go, what? So we are actually spending down our cash reserves in our IMRF Fund 50. We have a balance, a healthy balance that we can't spend on anything else other than IMRF, which is support staff retirement and Social Security. So we're spending down that balance now so we don't carry such a large balance. That's it. So what we're asking is the board to motion to approve the amended budget as presented. Unless you have questions also, that would be the other.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we would like to make the motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2022-2023 amended budget as presented.
Thank you. I'll second it.
Katie Johnston.
Aye.
Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Okay.
Can we just make sure that at the end, everybody has to
Yep.
sign that, so don't skedaddle at the end.
Here we got 3 copies. We'll sign. Okay. Memorandum of understanding.
All right, with the Teachers Association, we have 2 memoranda of understanding with the RCS EA. And again, this is whenever we have something that would apply to compensation or working conditions of our teaching staff. We would typically do an MOU when we're not in contract negotiations. So the first one applies to adding an assistant athletic director position for 1 school year to support the transition resulting from the retirement of athletic director Jane Jordahl. Does anyone other than Mr. Brotherton remember Ms. Jordahl not being the athletic director? So she's been there a long time. You remember? Okay, I know.
Unless we wasn't when I was.
All right. Number 2 applies to the district providing, so the plan is, just so you know, is that Jane is going to stay on as the athletic director. She'll be retired from teaching, stay on in the athletic director position, but we'll have an assistant working with her so that the next year that assistant would take over as the regular athletic director. Okay. 2, this second one applies to the district providing financial support to international teachers. This financial support is not additional compensation, but reimbursements for costs associated with maintaining their legal status to work for RCS, as well as some initial relocation expenses.
Any comments? Any questions? I'll make the motion
I second it.
to approve the MOU as presented.
Katie Johnston. Aye. Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye. Salary advance provision.
Okay, so this doesn't have to be an MOU because this is for staff that we have hired and they are not yet technically employees or members of the union. I would say though, the union doesn't disagree with us doing this. The board is asked to approve the salary advance provision for newly hired full-time staff as outlined in the document that's in your packet. A typical new hired teacher begins working for RCS during the first week of August, but is not eligible for pay until the September 15th payroll. This provision allows an individual employee to enter into an agreement that allows a salary advance of up to $2,500. This is not additional compensation to the employee, and this does not cost the district additional money. There is a risk that an employee would not fulfill their obligations and the district would need to collect the money advanced to the employee. Overall, this is intended to make us a more competitive employer by providing a one-time opportunity for new employees to assist with establishing themselves in the community and taking care of upfront major expenses like moving, apartment rental, damage deposit, and other immediate needs. Questions on that one?
I make a motion to approve the item as presented.
Thank you.
Second that. Katie Johnston.
Aye.
Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
All
Bid
right.
project approvals.
So we had 4 bid projects we've been working on. It takes a lot of time before we get to the bidding process, but as a reminder, there is a legal process for bidding where we have to publish this. Our architect has a list of what we would consider local contractors, even though they're more regional contractors, that we make sure they have seen the bids. So of the 4 bids, East Lawn Roof and Gutters. And we are recommending approval of that. That's a full tear off and replacement of the roof at East Lawn. funded with ESSER 3 money. Multi-site door project. So this is again working on upgrade or replacing the doors at East Lawn, Pleasant Acres, Northview, Ader, and Broadmeadow. So it should have just said all the schools. Multiple sources are used to fund this. There is a state maintenance grant with a local match of $50,000, a COPS grant with a local match of $101,000. COPS is a safety and security grant that we won. And then ESSER 3 would be the balance on that. JWA or site project number 2 is parking lots and sidewalks. For those of you that have been out behind the building, it is Pothole Central. And also we're looking at cleaning up the sidewalks. We have some sidewalks around the building that they really need to be repaired so people are safely walking on them. And so that's a lot of it's just repair. Unlike this parking lot project, which was a brand new parking lot. So the fourth is Broadmeadow Secure Entrance Project. So at this time, we're only recommending the base bid. And the reason for the base bid only is that we want to secure materials and supplies and kind of lock in on that. We don't anticipate doing the project until summer of 2024. So we may come back to the board later and ask for approval of the alternates, which are just phases of the project. So what we're doing at Broadmeadow is currently you've got the door, the main entrance, it faces the parent drop off there, faces whatever direction that is, west. Okay, and
So far, so good.
I hear you. So, and if you've gone into Broadmeadow, it's got it still has kind of the old entryway. You get buzzed in, you're in the airlock, and that's how you get into the staff lounge is in the secure entryway right now. And then you're in the hallway, you're in the building. You're not actually funneled through an office yet. So what this is doing is reconfiguring it so that the main entrance, it's still on that part of the building, but it's actually facing north. So you come in off the parking lot, instead of going in off the west, you go in off the north, so you walk around just a little bit. And the entryway now goes right through where the current principal's office is. So it'll be a secure double entry. It's also reconfiguring that other space in the existing entryway so that it's more efficient and usable for our staff. So it's, hopefully we'll be able to do all of it before we're done. But right now we're just aiming at the base bid on that. Questions? If you ask me how many bids we had, I can find that information.
Can you explain the local match?
So on some grants, in order for us to get the money, we have to say we're gonna spend the same amount. So the state maintenance grant, we will get every year. As long as we apply, it's $50,000. We just have to spend an equal amount. We have to match the 50,000. So that's already in our budget annually because we know we're gonna do that maintenance grant. And the COPS grant had a match also on the project. So
So the local match is
we're using
RCS.
We're using RCS tax dollars on that one, yeah.
Completion?
Minus
Minus the Broadmeadow.
Broadmeadow, it's summer, should be done by before the start of the school year. It's all very,
On that thing.
yep. And they can do the door, they seem to be able to knock out the doors pretty quickly once they're in. Parking lots, we know, as long as the weather cooperates. So I'm mostly on the roof because I feel like there's a lot of weather variables that can go in on that, so. I don't have a motion written anywhere, do I? There it is.
It
It's
is.
in there.
It's on there.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the items as presented, approve East Lawn's roof and gutters, approve JW Site Project 2, approve multi-site and door project, approve Broadmeadow Secure Entrance Project that'll be done later.
Base bid only, yes.
I'll second.
Thanks, Tyler.
Katie Johnston. Aye. Diana Mendoza. Aye. Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Bovee.
Aye. All right, program.
I do want to share, when I talked earlier, like we're putting $2 million more into the budget for operations and maintenance, a lot of that is these projects. So we're moving it into this fiscal year and not next fiscal year.
So just to understand, ESSER funds, that's funds that was given to us that have to be spent on these projects, right?
They have to be spent, and it's by the end of next school year, if I recall correctly. It might be the calendar year.
Okay.
But yeah, they're federal dollars that have to be spent or we lose them. Yep. All right. Alternative program. So I'm going to kind of go through the presentation that I shared. We did do a public forum on March 10th, I think. It was the Tuesday before spring break. 3 of our board members came. So Nikki and John and Diana came to hear the presentation and hear the questions and comments from the audience. Everyone there, other than board members and administrators, were school employees. But it was a good opportunity for us for DeAndre and I really to run through it and hear questions. We did change some things after the presentation just to clarify. So I am going to go through it with you because what we're asking for at the end is that administration is asking the board to approve the program. So there is in your packet, and this is posted in our board packet also, this is the proposal, okay? So we're asking the board to approve the proposal. The one thing that's missing in the proposal is a location, okay? But we need to make a decision. This is something we want to move forward with. We need to staff, we need to start identifying students and working with their families. We will have a location, and the board knows that administration is working on that behind the scenes. And as soon as we're able to just share publicly the location, we will do that, okay? What I do want to be clear is we don't have a location settled yet, okay? So it could be one of multiple places at this point. The 5 W's. So we're going to go through why does RCS need an alternative program? What will it look like? Who will be able to attend? When will this happen and where will this be? So the only one I can't really answer is that last W yet, okay? So the last 2 board meetings, Mr. Henderson, who is now the director of alternative programs, shared a lot on this. And there's a huge amount of detail in that document for you. But why do we need an alternative program? Increases in disruptive behaviors following COVID. District-wide, 39% of students in 2nd through 8th grade self-reported that they are under some risk or high risk for mental, social, emotional, or behavioral concerns. That's students self-reported. We have a problem with discipline disproportionality. RCS is in the top 20% of school districts in Illinois with racial disproportionality and out-of-school suspensions, and that's not a good 20%. Being in that top 20% is not a good one. No RCS students have been able to access the regional safe school program. It is full, so we're on year 2 of not being able to place students in the regional alternative program, which is ready. Students who are most disruptive are disproportionately not making adequate academic progress in a typical school setting. So right now, as we're trying to identify kids that may be retained, may need to go to summer school, there's a big overlap between those kids and students who have behavior or attendance concerns. We know that the pandemic, socioeconomic distress, cultural and other factors have created an opportunity gap for some of our most under-resourced students. This gap, which importantly includes academic performance, will not be overcome within a traditional school setting, but rather a setting where students are better supported individually and responded to holistically. Another reason why, this is what I have been saying the last 2 or 3 meetings, is that it's time that we need to do something different than what we're currently doing, especially for this group of students. What will the alternative program look like? So we'll have students in grades 5 through 8. We're aiming at a staff to student ratio of about 1 to 5. Since the last board meeting, we've posted the positions. There's actually a lot of internal interest in our staff moving into the program, which is great. I think that means that we do have a lot of our teachers and teaching assistants that understand the need for this, and they want to work with these students. Long-term, we're aiming at 60 students. So long-term, it means we're looking at whatever space we go into, we want to be able to expand up to 60 students. Increase social work and therapeutic supports. So we're investing in this in terms of more teachers per student, more social work and more therapeutic supports per student than what we're providing in a traditional school setting. We will focus on including the family in the process, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Classes will teach academic skills, but we want to focus the classes on real-world, hands-on applications. So it's a combination of traditional classroom setting. The one example I like to give is one of Mr. Henderson's dreams is that we will have a kitchen in whatever space we end up with that is adequate enough so that kids could do for instance, a food service class where they're actually preparing meals and serving those meals to their peers, but under the guidance of a qualified teacher who also has experience in restaurant and hospitality. And those people exist. We used to call them home ec teachers. They're now called family and consumer sciences teachers. There's just very, very few of them out there. Flexible class choices based on student and staff interest and needs. So we can't be that flexible in a junior high of 500 kids. We have to make sure every kid gets social studies. In this, we can make sure kids get social studies, but maybe the teachers and kids want to, I don't know, study 20th century US history with music. So that would be something you could potentially do in an alternative setting that's not nearly as easy to translate into a school for a general education setting, a regular school setting, I should say. It'll also be a shorter day because we're able to eliminate transition times. We would do working lunch with the kids. I added this note in that Bulldog Academy, which is the junior high alternative program, and CARE, which is our K-5 alternative program, already are on shortened days. One of the reasons we have to do shortened days is because of the staffing, in that our teachers do not have prep times built into the day. Our teachers will have their prep times at the beginning and or end of the day. And so that's one of the reasons for that. Programming customized for each student. Most of our students we anticipate will be full-time. However, this will give us a platform for us to open up to having remote instruction for some kids on a limited basis. And we anticipate some kids being hybrid. So maybe child, I think at the high school Eagle Academy, which is a credit recovery program, I believe those students have to still come in that are on remote. They still have to come in for 2 hours a week or something and meet with staff and review things. We do want to provide transportation. If the site is located centrally in Rantoul, so let's say if the site was here at Ader, we would likely not change how we're doing transportation, okay? If the site were less centrally located, and it would still have to be in Rantoul, we would look at possibly transporting all of the students in that situation. We already transport all students for CARE, and we already transport students for Bulldog Academy. Not all Bulldog Academy, because some kids live really close to Ader, so they'll just walk. But so we're aware of transportation, especially since some of these students have significant attendance challenges, and transportation does help for some students getting them to and from school. What about clubs, athletics, and activities? If they are grades 6 through 8, they would be able to still participate in the clubs, athletics, and activities at Ader. We do that currently with students who are in Bulldog Academy. And when we've had students at Ready, which is the regional safe school, those students also are able to participate. It's not that easy to make it happen all the time just because of time. Our 5th graders that might be there are the only thing we're really talking about there is would they be able to participate in Explorers? And the answer is yes, but the but is we've got to make sure we figure out how to get them there and what are we going to do about that gap time that they have. But we aren't going to exclude kids from those things. Something Mr. Henderson really likes to talk about is in a smaller setting, we can avoid having to rely on exclusionary discipline. Right now, at Ader, for instance, if two students have a fight, we tend to rely on exclusionary discipline, meaning the children are suspended from school. What we're trying to do here is provide the resources and have the resources in place so that if two kids get in a fight, the staff in that school can make a decision, can these kids safely stay at school? So that's an important question. Can the two kids be safe at school? And then we have enough staff where we can separate those kids, but keep them at school until we resolve whatever the problem is. There would still be disciplinary consequences. I don't want to be misunderstood on that, but sending kids home for suspension would not be the default. The program will include the K-5 care staff and students. We want to house them together because we need a certain number of staff in the location to make sure that, well, if somebody's out sick or if something happens, that we have enough staff. Care does not, there's 3 full-time staff members with care. They usually have 5 to 10 students. Some days they might have 1. So we're going to be able to borrow staff from their program when they're not full with students. Okay, who would be able to participate in the alternative program? Oh, it's always good when we're sitting still so long the lights go out. All students may be considered. All students may be considered. I have said before that this is not a program for special ed students, but I want to be careful in how I say that because we would not exclude kids just because they have special education. So any kid can be considered. We would have to look at, can we provide the services that child needs in the alternative program or not? But we would be able to consider all kids. It is not, however, a program for students with disabilities. But a student with a disability could still be considered. There are 4 pathways. So we talked mostly about behavior because realistically, we think that's who we're going to be opening with. But there are 4 pathways for consideration: behavior, attendance, alternative to retention, and parent-family request. The first 3 on there, they go together a lot. The other one is we think I know there are kids who their parents on the parent-family request, kids who don't really want to go to a regular school, but they need to go to school. They just don't do well in the larger setting at Ader. So we know we would have some parent-family requests. Whatever pathway we're looking at, we're going to have the family involved with the school in the decision-making process. So it shouldn't happen that the school just tells a kid that, hey, you're going to Rise tomorrow, right? We need to have a meeting. We need to have the parent there. We need to make sure, for instance, if it's a behavioral reason, have we exhausted what we need to do at Ader before we just switch a kid over to the other program? And we want to make sure we're having that conversation with the parent. Alternative, well, there's a slide. Okay. Once all reasonable school-based behavioral and/or attendance interventions have been exhausted, and reasonable is a key word in there, and documented, a student may transfer into the RISE. It should just say RISE. The other would be the parent-family request. We would obviously have to develop the process, but we would, parents, even the student potentially could request to be considered for placement. That would then go through a process of that same meeting, making sure the family and the student are aware of what the change is, what the school looks like, before we would move forward with any placement. The other part down here is the possibility of remote learning. So we do have, this was approved last year by you all. A full-time remote learning program can be offered for our students in grades 6 through 8. So the board is aware that we have a few kids right now who are full-time remote as an alternative to expulsion. But we want to be able to offer full-time remote for families of kids who, for instance, we got a question yesterday about a child with a medical condition and whether we could offer a full-time remote program for that student. This would allow us to do that once we have this in place. Right now, we're able to say you get 5 hours a week of homebound, but what we could do potentially is have a full-time program. The kid comes in 1 or 2 hours a week, maybe more. We would decide that with each student, how many hours we need in person. Again, regardless of what pathway is being considered, all pathways must involve family and school in the decision-making process. How many students? We anticipate staffing to accommodate 30 to 40 students. The initial pool of students would be determined at the end of the 22-23 school year, and that is now. So as soon as we're approved, Mr. Henderson would like to start identifying, I think he's probably already been starting to identify kids, but set up those process of meeting with the families. He has staff already that he would like to request hiring that would be involved in that process also. It's not going to be a surprise to any kid and any family if we're going to go into RISE. So when is another W. Next school year, it will follow the regular school district calendar. That's important. And the school day start and end times are not finalized, but there is an example schedule in the proposal of what it could look like. Again, Bulldog Academy and CARE are already on these shortened schedules. I'm almost done. The final, where is it going to be? The location has not been determined. What I can share is that we are looking at our current school district facilities. So can we house it within our own buildings? We're also looking at third-party facilities. Administration prefers a location that is just for RISE, whether that's a standalone facility or we're somehow able to place it into one of our current schools, but have enough separation from the building that it would be in. So an example of that would be when you're in central office here, you often don't know that we're attached to another school, okay? Unless that room sometimes gets a little loud, that's right through that door, but you usually don't know you're in a school. So if we can create that separation within one of our buildings, that would be, and from an administrator perspective, that would be good. Why is it important for RISE to have its own location? If Mr. Henderson could be here tonight, he can give you the long explanation, but it is about the kid. What he wants to create is a place that kids view as a good place to be, and I think special. That's my word. He would never say special. That it's their own thing, and they're not just in a room at the end of the hallway like they are right now. Okay, so all we have right now is Bulldog Academy, one teacher, she's wonderful, and a teaching assistant who's pretty darn good too, and kids in one room. And they look out the window all day long and see their friends go by and they can't be with them, although they'll just walk out sometimes. But we want it to be its own school. In my dream for this alternative program is it's enough of its own school where it's not viewed as an alternative school, it's just viewed as a school that's not AIR, okay? That we have 2 junior high programs. That's a long way off, but I think it's realistic. Any location we choose, contrary to the rumors I've heard, it must be within RCS. So I've heard Ludlow has some space in their classrooms, but no, we can't do that. So I was a little joke.
We wouldn't want to do that.
No, we're not going to do that.
We wouldn't want to do that.
We wouldn't want to do that. Correct. That was a little joke. It's for the public. How many people are watching right now? We had 4 on there earlier. Another question we've gotten and we talked about is why not do this for all kids? Okay. Well, the truth is most of our students can be successful in a traditional school setting and do not need specialized programming. Most kids can be successful in a regular setting. The other piece is there is a a lot of additional expense to this. So the budget is in your packet. We're looking at an annual additional expenditure to start of between $500,000 and $600,000. Most of that is in additional staff to support this group of students. To staff it up and to spend that, to get to that ratio for 500 kids is not realistic budgetarily, okay? We need more staff. We need to invest in mental health services, so we are working with a third-party contractor for therapeutic services. And we're gonna likely spend costs on transportation, but that will come down to where it's located. Even if we wanted to scale it up and we had this unlimited pool of money, we wouldn't probably be able to find teachers. As the board knows, we struggle right now to staff with our current staffing. So any increase in staffing puts even more strain on that. So again, but the most important thing is most kids do pretty darn good in a regular school classroom, okay? Whew, I'm done.
Any
That
questions?
was only 27 minutes.
No? Glad you're counting. Questions? Comments? Okay. I'll make the motion to approve the creation of Bulldog Rise to include staffing, procurement of materials, and the process of identifying and placing students. Can I get a second?
Second.
Who?
Either one, I
I'm
think is
gonna call
fine.
We'll let Nikki.
All right. Katie Johnston. Diana Mendoza.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye. Thank you.
I like applauding that one. Thank you, guys. I think it's a really good thing for our students.
Okay.
All right.
Discussion, presentation, bullying, prevention, and response.
I don't think we have anything left to vote on tonight. Except to close the meeting and open the meeting, those things. All right, so there was a request that we revisit the bullying prevention and response to bullying presentation so that we could have some more discussion. We've had some, as board members, you know, we've had some public comment about bullying. We receive other communications from families and you're members of the community and you hear about it. So we presented this, a lot of this content, I want to say November was when it was presented. And so I changed it around a little bit. I put some more info in here to try to get us to discuss it a little more. And get some, I have some actual questions, discussion questions. So let's just jump in. So I'm not going to dwell on this, but because we did present it before, but where is this all covered? We have multiple board policies that address it. We have our student and staff, our student handbooks. And one of the things I always like to highlight is in 2015, there was a significant legislative change to student discipline rules. And that does have an effect on how we're able to address bullying. The main reason it has an effect on bullying is Senate Bill 100 eliminates zero tolerance policies related to discipline. So I will frequently hear from families that say, I thought you had a zero tolerance policy on bullying. Right, we do, but that doesn't mean that every child who does something that's bullying gets suspended or gets expelled or that's not what that means. We cannot have if this happens, then that happens in terms of rules. We have parameters on that, but we do have to look and use something that's called progressive discipline. And that basically means that your first offense is treated differently than your 10th offense, which is also, I think folks are familiar with that. This diagram shows what I can say when I started as an administrator, every one of these things on this list could have resulted in suspension from school. I mean, when I first started, kids were suspended for dress code. They're not anymore. But what it's showing is, if you look on here, bullying is on here right here somewhere. There's extreme cyberbullying, is on here. I don't know how to define extreme cyberbullying, but that suspension may be appropriate. Bullying and harassment's down here. And so this is just legal guidance that came along with Senate Bill 100. So just showing you the perspective of the severity of issues. Bullying, however, and harassment occur on a spectrum. So you could have some bullying that we might view as, oh, that's just how kids behave, bullying, up to, like they say, extreme bullying where kids are resulting in self-harm. We've all heard about cases where kids have committed suicide. So there's a broad spectrum of when people talk about bullying, what it potentially means. The definition of bullying, so we actually have a legal definition of bullying, and that is outlined in our board policy, which the board policy is coming directly from state statute. The big thing is it severe and pervasive? Okay. Bullying includes cyberbullying and means any severe or pervasive physical or verbal act or conduct, including communications made in writing or electronically, directed toward a student or students that has or can be reasonably predicted to have the effect of one or more of the following. And then it does list those out. But the key in the interpretation is it severe and pervasive? Typically, well, that's why I have examples. I'll get into the examples. So we have some good documents out there that we use. So what I want to say is when a parent calls me, as when I was a building principal or our current building, we talk about this stuff, like how do we respond when a parent calls and says, my kid is being bullied, okay? The first part of the process is for us to listen to the parent, okay? Hear the parent out, what is the concern? What's happening, okay? I usually then say, has this been happening before? Has this happened before with your daughter? Has your daughter told anyone it's happening before? Because if we don't know it's happening, we don't have any way to address it. What we're not doing is jumping right to telling a parent that doesn't fit the definition of bullying, okay? We're going to listen to what the behavior being described is and try to problem solve what that behavior is. It's very typical that the behavior that's reported is not actually bullying, but that's not really that important. It's important in terms of reporting that we have to do later on. But what's more important is that we're addressing the behavior that's the concern. So we have some documents. I don't know if any parent has ever read my exciting FAQ document that I created, but we have this lovely website which goes through and has questions. So I've directed parents to it before. I don't know if they read it, but it goes through step by step. What is bullying? How do we address it? So it's all written out. Another thing is we do have an online reporting form. It's available in Spanish. Also, I know this looks like a small thing up there, but the actual reporting matters. So what school staff will often do is like we got, I want to say, I recall 3 bullying reports came through today on this form from the junior high. Okay. Why did we get 3 from the junior high? It's because one of the social workers, when I read the reports, met with a group of kids who were all having a problem. So she's just initiating the documentation by using this form. She's not making a decision that it's bullying or not bullying, because the kids are coming in and saying, I'm being bullied. Okay, so part of taking it seriously is listening to the kid. And so the form was actually filled out by the social worker with the kids. So I had to read them and then I figured, oh, they're all together. It's all 3 of them complaining about another kid. Okay. But you need to get the information. When did it happen? Where did it happen? We ask questions like, not what school we were at, but who is engaged in the behavior? What's the name? What are the names or descriptions of the people who are doing the bullying behavior? We need information to try and, oftentimes kids don't know who it was, especially at the junior high. Elementary, they all know who the other kid is. At the junior high, they don't always know the kid's name. So I don't know, it's the big blonde haired kid. Okay. Well, we can figure it out. We ask these questions because this is important for determining, one, it's for reporting, but there's bullying on the basis of any of these things is more problematic. So are you being bullied, do you think, because of your race or what country you were born in, or your religion or your sex or your sexual orientation? What we see the most is they will check other, kids will check other and write in something like, they think I'm ugly, right? So we get those kinds of kid responses. If someone were to check sex, sexual orientation, or gender-related identity expression, which this is also why at the elementary level, these are usually filled out with an adult. Those would possibly trigger a Title IX investigation, not a bullying investigation. So if any of those three get checked, there's a different level of scrutiny that has to go into the investigation process if it potentially is based on sex. We also know that students from any of those groups are more likely to be victims of bullying, which is another reason to ask it. One of the most common groups of students to be bullied disproportionately are students with physical or mental disabilities, okay? So that's also a reason to track it. How was the conduct? What, like electronic, written, physical, verbal? None of those. Other? A lot of verbal, electronic. Where did it happen? It happens a lot of places. It doesn't always happen at school. And then we need to describe it. So that's just the reporting step. And then if what's reported is possibly going to fit the definition of bullying, there is a investigation process that the administration can go through, or should go through to fully investigate so this is just the documentation of interviews, communication with families, and then what interventions or disciplinary actions are taking place. We would only have to do this if it's going to fit if we anticipate that the behavior is going to fit the definition of bullying, okay? Everybody awake? Okay. So bullying is a combination of, so when we get a report of bullying, in order to determine if it is bullying, it needs to, I don't know, this helps me understand it. It's got to be unwanted behavior. Okay, so kids don't usually report wanted behavior. So threats, teasing, name calling, excluding, preventing others from going where they want or going or doing what they want. That's exclusion. Pushing, hitting, physical violence. I would say I'd throw in there unwanted sexual touching is another one that could come in. Those are all unwanted behaviors. And those are all behaviors that we would address at the school level. Whether it's bullying or not, we want to address those behaviors. The next thing we have to look at is, was it severe and pervasive? So if it's unwanted behavior and severe and pervasive, we're likely going to be doing a bullying investigation. Okay? For it to be considered bullying, there has to then also be this imbalance of power by definition. And down at the bottom, it says bullying is an imbalance of power. This is key. Bullied students are unable or viewed as unlikely to defend themselves, which is what causes the imbalance of power. So this is when you think of like the movie where the big kid picks on the little kid. That's what we're getting into here. It's not always physical size though, right? It's the cool kid versus the not cool kid could be the imbalance of power. There's relational violence, relational bullying in terms of boyfriend, girlfriend that goes on potentially, especially at the junior high, that could also come into effect where a boy would have an imbalance of power over a girl. It could go the other way, but I'm being realistic. So really you're looking to define it as bullying, is it going to fit in those three? Because otherwise what we have is unwanted behavior. And that's really what we have to address no matter what, is the unwanted behavior. So it's ready for your quiz show board. You gotta pay attention now. Here's an example. Is it bullying? The audience, you can participate too. All right. My daughter was being teased today because of her outfit. Another girl called my daughter ugly. Is it bullying?
If it was only today, no.
Oh, Mr. Brotherton?
I would say no.
Okay. So, is this bullying behavior? If this was the only time the child had been teased by the other girl, then no, this is not a bullying situation because it is not a repeated behavioral act. If the child had been teased by this girl in the past and there's a pattern of behavior, it may be bullying. The important thing on all of my examples is we're still going to say you need to report it to the school. There's nothing wrong with letting the school know if you want the school to assist in helping resolve the situation. And the school will hear you out and try to help. All right, next, is it bullying? I have 5 questions. My son got into a fight. Diana, this will just make you the example parent in this one, just for fun. My son got into a fight today at school with another boy. The other boy had been calling him names, and my son was standing up for himself. Well, you can all answer. Diana is not really on the spot.
Yes, she is.
He wouldn't dare do that, but anyway.
My son would, and no, I don't think it's.
I mean, because it had been
Fight
going on
today
for
at
some
school,
time,
another boy-
right?
The other boy had been calling him names, and my son was standing up. Are you saying,
I want to ask, what was your son saying? That's what I want to say as a parent. So I'll just give you the answer. It could be bullying. Typically, a fight is not bullying behavior, okay? So remember on that imbalance of power question, it's someone who's not going to stand up for themselves or fight back is who's typically going to be bullied. A fight is a fight, and it would be managed as physical aggression. So usually when this scenario happens, we're investigating a fight and we're addressing the fight. The name calling leading up to the fight, that could have been bullying behavior, but we would have to know if it's been ongoing or if it's been a pattern, those things, yeah.
The evidence would be there, right, after the investigation.
And I, having worked in middle schools for 20 years, will tell you that your son said something to the other boy also.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw that in there. Not always, we're gonna, but it's a fight, and that's the behavior we're addressing here on this one. Is it bullying, number 3? My son is regularly, that's the key word, being called names by a group of other boys. They make fun of him because of his weight, his glasses, and because he is smart. This has been going on for several weeks in classes and in the hallways.
Yes.
Okay, I set you up with a softball. It is very likely it is bullying. This is repeated behavior over time, and it fits the definition of bullying. The student and/or parent should immediately report the concerns to the school. One of the ways I would know in my head when I look at this, it's bullying because it's gonna be really hard to fix this. And that's the reality of it. This is a hard thing for a school to fix because you've got a group of boys picking on a boy. And how do you start to change that behavior? And so that's a challenge. Okay, example number next. I think it's 4. A girl in my daughter's math class is bullying her by calling her stupid. It's almost the first one. I feel like we did this one already. Calling a student stupid one time is not bullying behavior. It is mean behavior and not appropriate. If this is part of an ongoing repeated pattern of name calling, then we may have bullying situation. But either way, I would tell the parent, we need to know about it. You need to let us know, and we'll work on addressing it at school. Hopefully it's just a one-off, but yeah. Okay, number 5. I don't think this is a hard one. Ooh, here we go. This is a trick question. A group of girls is bullying my son on social media. They are calling him names and they are threatening to have another boy beat him up. This happens every day. Check your kids' phones. All right. So what's interesting on this one is this even a school issue? That's the trick question part of it. All right. So from this brief example, it appears that the group has been doing this behavior over time and the group is making direct threats. So the direct threats is a concern from the school level, right? So we're going to want to know, when is it going to happen? Where is the threat? Are they threatening to beat you up at school? Or are they just saying, I'm going to get you, that kind of thing. This type of behavior frequently is referred to as cyberbullying. What we would tell parents to do is save copies of the messages, saving screenshots. And we would probably advise initially that you report this to the police because the next sentence here, unless the messages on social media were generated at school or the threat to beat up the student was explicitly stated to take place at school, the school is going to have very little authority over the situation. We can mediate, we can talk to the kids, we can talk to the parents, but we can't take any formal action against the students because this is an outside of school thing. Because of the potential negative impact on the student and the possibility that it can spill over to the school from home, the school would want to know. If there's ever a threat, and there's actually a lot of case law that goes on about this because schools have tried to suspend or expel kids for things they have done online outside of school. If there's a threat, for instance, that says we're going to fight in the cafeteria tomorrow, well, now the school has some authority to more directly intervene. But solving this problem isn't going to happen through a disciplinary action. We're going to have to involve a lot of communication with the kids and probably the parent on this. All right, that's it. You survived my trick questions. And I still did all the talking, so.
Which is your want.
So, so all that sounds really good, like technically, but I think parents, at least it seemed like the ones that were talking to us, wanted to know what we would do when when their children are being harmed at school. They don't care, they don't want to hear from us about it's really not technically bullying. And I know that you said that that's not how we come at it and that we sit and we listen to them. But I guess my thing is, if we're listening to them and we're doing all these things and we're reporting and doing all the things, why does it keep happening so much? And why are they saying, hey, it's happening here and now it's also spilling over into the high school? Like, how can we as a community help this and fix this problem? Board. I don't want to, I'd be interested in what the board has to say on that too. Because they're coming to us. They want to know, they want some answers from us. And so do we have any ideas of what we can start doing to help address this problem? Because I don't feel like the parents are satisfied with all of this. I mean, all of that sounds great, but that's not satisfying the parents. And they want the behavior to stop.
They want the bullying to stop.
Yeah. And how do you make kids actually stop being mean to each other? And I understand a lot of it is junior high and the hormones and that's what happens at the age and all that type of thing. But it seems as though it's gotten worse throughout the years. And has it gotten worse because of social media? So then if that's the issue, how do we address that? If we don't have the jurisdiction, that's probably not the right word, authority, to do anything if it's not happening on school grounds.
Because most of it is happening at home on social media applications.
And then it gets spilled over the next day when they come to school.
And the outreach we are trying to do on it isn't working. In the beginning of February, ADER had their presentation. It was the state's attorney office on cyberbullying and one parent attended. On Tuesday, we had the Gateway Mental Health Services presented at the high school. It was a joint effort and there were 2 parents that went between us and the high school. So,
I missed both of them. I was disappointed.
well, and that's the reality of it, right? So part of it is, so one thing with the state's attorney is we are gonna start bringing them in to do presentations with the students. It's probably, I don't know that it'll happen this year. But Ms. Waldhauser, she really liked the presenter was a teacher, she knew what she was doing, she was great with the kids. They actually did it earlier in the year at pre-K. 4 families came to that. But it's not, the message isn't being heard by enough of our families. I mean, I think social media is a big issue.
They're culprit.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it is. But that doesn't negate the fact that we need to figure out some type of something. I mean, do you think that RISE might help with some of this? If they are being disciplined because of behavior at all? I mean, honestly, do you think we'll see less of it because some of these behavioral things or no, or do you think that's just how kids
I
are?
hope it's less, but really a part of what we're aiming at is not excluding kids, not kicking kids out of school as much. So not doing the suspensions. I think I don't know, so bullying doesn't generally, the fighting, the aggressive behavior isn't what's the challenge in the bullying, though. It's the meanness, it's the constant picking on social media. It often escalates to the violence. So as the board knows, one of our recent rounds of expulsions, that was social media was at the root of that. So I don't know, there's no magic wand.
I understand that, but I think those are the types of things that we need to start talking about. I mean, are there workshops that we can do? Are there things that we can start doing for our teachers to help with this type of thing? I don't know. I mean, have we looked at other school communities across the country or even in our community? I mean, within Illinois to see what they're doing to help this type of thing?
How has it been working with, when bullying occurs, when you bring all groups together from both sides? Do you get cooperation? Are they coming? And
So this is where I think you're right. I'm answering your RISE question because you just prompted me. What we're trying to put in place at RISE would put in enough of the resources so that you could, it's called restorative, whether we call it restorative practices, restorative circles, but actually bringing the kids together to talk in a safe way.
Yeah.
Where they can talk through the problems. Now that works for a lot of what people call bullying, okay? That's not good for real bullying, right? So that's excellent for conflict resolution and working with kids. And we have seen success with that, and I've been in schools where we've had success with that. It comes down to having the staff that have the time. It's gonna take a whole day to do a restorative conflict circle, is what it was called, over a fight is at least half a day with 2 kids to really get through that. And it's worth it to get through it. It doesn't mean they won't fight next week. But it's part of it is about teaching the kids how to communicate with each other.
In a healthy manner, because they're not always going to get along, but to be able to say, yeah, or I'm mad at you right now and you need to not talk to me right now because it's better than the bullying stuff that's going on.
I do think we need to do a better job with our online safety for our students. So one thing I guess to share with the board is we are at this point, hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have a tech teacher at all 4 elementary schools next year.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And part of that curriculum with the tech teacher is just the online safety. There's a lot of, I mean, I've experienced this recently with the cyber with a friend of mine, their child basically got catfished. Eighth grader, sending a nude photo. Well, that's very disruptive for that child for a long time. And so that's the other thing that happens, right? If that happens, then other kids are gonna get it, they're gonna share it, it's cyberbullying. Yeah, a big part too, though, I wanna make sure to share on the response to bullying is the kids that are truly victims of bullying, okay? A very big thing we have to do, and I do think we do a good job of this, is providing supportive services to those kids. So those kids tend to be kind of your outcast child. Like if nobody would sit with them at lunch, that child. We have to make sure we're providing support to those kids. And I do think we do a good job of that because we have enough social workers and counselors in our buildings that we make sure those kids have an adult that they can go to and they can talk to. But ending the bullying is definitely a challenge. What are you interested in tasking administration to do regarding, I heard you say some things in there.
Well, like I think I had mentioned this to you before. One of the things that we had here eons ago when I went to school here is help peers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was where the kids that had a stable relationship with teachers and their peers were mentors for kids that were having a hard time getting along with their peers. So they would buddy up and help them get along and show them the ropes of whatever needs to be done. Or if there had to be a hard conversation about smells or what have you.
You mean kids that smell?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Then their peer was talking to them and explaining stuff so that maybe those types of bullying types of things wouldn't happen.
So,
And then when kids see the kids that are more stable, talking to the kid is not as stable and getting bullied, then they tend to talk to each other more.
okay. So a peer-to-peer, some type of peer-to-peer program. Investigate what is working in places, what we could potentially do along those lines.
Yes, I think having some type of coursework or curriculum that included tech stuff, what's going on. I think it is a great idea, possibly having workshops for the teachers on how to handle these types of things.
Okay. Other board members? Thank you. I think there's a lot of things that we are doing that we need to make the board aware of also, just so we're, the things that we already do. That's not to say we can't do better. Ultimately, the way, in my opinion, and in my experience, to reduce bullying behaviors, let's say at the elementary level, is it starts with having a strong classroom teacher who, as you said, training, but is knowledgeable in identifying when things are happening in the classroom. And then in that classroom, are we creating a community of learners that is a safe community? And one of the ways that we do that as a district is that is a big part of what conscious discipline is. And there's misunderstanding out there about what it is, but we are, I would say, revisiting conscious discipline and providing extensive additional training to our first and second year teachers to going into this upcoming school year, because we have fallen behind in that. And so in a school where and then if you can have a classroom where conscious discipline is working well, but if you have a school that's embracing it, it's even more powerful. And the example I love to give is Pleasant Acres, where I really think just about all the staff there embrace it and are doing a good job with it, and you can tell when you're in there. And that's a lot of it, again, is just teaching kids how to communicate. My favorite thing is the time machine. If you've ever seen it, it's on the floor in Pleasant Acres, and I don't understand it, but every time I'm there, seems like I see two kids in the time machine. And that's a process of saying what happened and kind of going back and replaying. I'm gonna butcher it, aren't I? All right, it's the time machine, I gotta present. But there are things like that we are doing that are effective. So, yeah, so I think making sure the board's aware of those things would be helpful. But I heard your other comments and I will follow up on those.
But not just the board, the community wants to know. I mean, we're getting yelled at by them. They want to know what we are doing. It's not just something that we need to know, it's something they need to know too. Because it seems like they don't know that that these things are happening or that there's even a resource.
Like on the newsletter,
Something,
send it out.
because they're like, why is this happening? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Well,
And the hardest thing on that, at what are you doing, is it's going to happen still.
Yeah.
Right? And I know the board is aware of that because I've had these conversations with most of you, but, and there's some, I'm gonna skip ahead a minute. What I did is, this just goes through a lot of things I'd already said. Oh, well, no, I thought I had it in there. Oh, it's kind of in here on the district's responsibility. There it is. It's this area down here. And I realize it kind of sounds like I'm making excuses, but I think part of what I have to do is make sure the board is aware of, as the trustees of the school district, are we doing as a district what we legally need to do? Different question than, are we doing absolutely everything we can do to stop it, right? So what we have to do is make sure we have a bullying policy in place. It's an approved policy. And then this is an important one, is we have to enforce the rules and regulations covered by the bullying policy. Where school districts get in trouble is bullying is happening and they're not actually trying to do anything about it. I am very confident in our district that we have all of these mechanisms for reporting it and documenting it, that we're trying to stop it through enforcement. This part in italics said it is not reasonable that a school district will have no bullying because a school district cannot control the actions of students. As long as a district is following and enforcing its rules, a school district is not liable for the actions of individual students. However, it is expected that we work hard to prevent bullying among our students. And so I'm hearing that we need to not just do better on that, but communicate better on that so that folks know the different things that we're attempting to do. Okay. All right. I'm not going to do that one. I spent way too long comparing bullying and speeding, but you guys had a good discussion, so we don't need to have more discussion, comments, questions. But anything else on that? Most of, yeah, I know Nikki, you and I have talked about it too, many times. So anything else? There's nothing to vote on.
health is important to me.
Should be. So speaking of mental health, this is our next topic. This is a discussion item. Could have been an information item. I've informed the board of this, but Promise Healthcare / Francis Nelson, I don't know exactly what we call them. They are looking to open a full service school-based health clinic in Rancho City Schools. They're planning to start initially with behavioral mental health services and primary care. Eventually, and assuming they can staff it, they want to provide dental and full service vision so that we could actually have kids come in, get an eye exam and get glasses. Right now, our dental services that we're able to provide to our kids are just screenings. so you're aware, so we do screenings a couple times a year. A screening is, so they do a cleaning and a screening. A screening doesn't do much if the dentist says you need 5 cavities filled and then the child's family can't find a dentist that will take their insurance. It's the state card. So this program would be able to do that. The clinic must be housed within a school property to be a school-based health clinic. I also want to make sure the board is aware that the clinic is open to the public. So if Tyler needs to come in for something, Mr. Wilson, you can come in. It's open to the public. So
They get here.
they don't do haircuts though. So, I don't know that he thought that was funny. All right, so,
I thought it was fun.
now Jennifer Erickson and I have been working on this. Jenny, her son is getting married on Saturday, so she's not here right now. Is in Urbana, we had where Jenny and I both worked previously. It's the same agency has a clinic. It's in Urbana High School. The way it works for students is the first appointment, the parent has to go with. Okay, but after that, the child can go to and from their appointments without their parent. So that's why that first appointment has to happen. That's a huge advantage for us. We have to consider things like transportation. So if the health clinic is housed at Ader, for instance, how are we going to get kids from North through Broad Meadow, Pleasant Acres, and East Lawn to the health clinic? That's a good problem to have though, as far as I'm concerned. Because right now, we are excluding a large number of kids from school each year because they don't have vaccinations and they don't have their physicals. And so right now, a lot of those kids have to wait until either the Carl Mobile Clinic comes to town, which right now, at least we've got that up to at least once a month. The agency you work with also provides services. But most of our students don't have regular health insurance. Transportation is a significant obstacle for our families. Most of us here, we can just hop in a car and go to Champaign-Urbana and get our kids shots, okay? But a lot of our families can't do that. I want to make sure the board is aware that at some point you would have to take formal action and we'd have an intergovernmental agreement, that kind of thing to do it. One thing that to be aware of is there is reproductive health care provided through this. I can safely say not abortions, and we're not going down that route, but the healthcare provider is able to provide the same services as any doctor at a primary care office. But one thing that raises red flags for some people is the reproductive health care. But the access is really important. I think it's a great opportunity for us. It's going to have some, what questions do you have? I know I'd sent an email, but we hadn't had a chance to discuss it at all, so.
Question and a comment. So thinking of security and safety for the students, it's open to the public. Is it separated enough? Will it be separated enough from
Discuss that.
the students?
It's going to have to be.
Okay.
So we don't know exactly where we're going to land on location at this point. But whatever school we would house it in, we will have to create some type of separation. So it's free, but it's not, right? So there's going to be some initial construction that the health clinic will need to do to set up their exam rooms. We're going to walk through spaces again with them next week. But one of the things we talk about is security. So for instance, if central office were the health clinic, well, how are we going to keep someone walking right from the health clinic into Ader, right? So those are things that we would have to talk about at whatever site it becomes. So now the truth is, when I was in Urbana, we did not have a lot of general public coming in. I don't know, it could be different here, partly because we're next door to the that building that's right there. Community Service Center. We're right next door to the Community Service Center, so there's already a lot of adults coming right next door every day for services. So, but yeah, that's gonna be a consideration. We already talked with them. They agreed in kind to any adult coming in is probably gonna have to go through the Raptor system as part of a screening, just to even be in one of our properties. So
Ooh, but what happens if there's
the only
someone
person,
that has a sexual offense?
they should not be on a school property to begin with. They wouldn't be able to access it. Or they would have to have an appointment. They can't just show up, if that makes sense. Okay.
And then my quick comment was, I don't know if anybody saw in the news, but Paris has something that seems very similar to this. And it seems like it's been kind of up and running for a while, and it seems like it's been a really good thing for that community, so.
I think I
thought
saw
that was an
Matt
interesting story.
Tuner Effingham, one of them started up. There's a lot of funding coming out right now to start these. Francis Nelson is interested in starting something in Rantoul, even if they don't get the school-based health clinic grant. They do have their own funding to at least get in here and to be set up to do physicals, immunizations, and some primary care.
So are they the ones that would have to apply for the grant to come here? Okay.
They would also, we probably aren't giving them the space for free either. That's another thing. So we want it to work out so it's, we're giving them a low-cost space because they're providing a free service to our students. But they would assume things like utilities for whatever space they have. But things like they probably won't pay for internet because we have internet that they can tap into. And
So this will be free base to every student?
it would be any person. So again, the target is this, the reason it's in a school is to try to get kids in. Well, I said person because we met with Rantoul High School today about it to make sure they know, because getting kids from the high school to here or wherever the site is gonna be a concern for them. But all the feeder schools would be able potentially to transport kids over during the day, RTHS feeder schools. So we're really trying to, we may actually be able to put some funding into it through the community partnership grant that we currently have. We have that for one more year. So that might be able to help offset some costs of construction and things like that too. So I guess a question I have after I'm talking it through with you is, what do they realistically think they're gonna see in terms of adults? Right? Coming in for health clinic services. So I don't know that.
Fairly a lot, if it's Francis Nelson, because
They would also likely only operate during school hours, but they said they have flexibility to do evening hours. They're gonna wait and see kind of what the demand is from kids and parents. But yeah, I just don't know what the adult intake is for this type of facility.
I would imagine it would be a lot for this community specifically. I can't imagine that too many of our community members have health insurance.
Well, then that was kind of the Paris story. I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but they have, a population of people who are really using it, it seemed like outside of the schools.
Yep. And this is actually one of these weird upsides of COVID, I would say, is that the core Champaign-Urbana of Champaign County realized that there were these other population centers in Champaign County that needed services. And we were really feeling that in the peak of COVID because our kids couldn't even get COVID tests.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's why I think we've had more outreach from Carl, from your agency, and now from this one.
Great to have Francis Nelson and Elizabeth and Carl all in Rantoul. That sounds great to me.
There's a hospital still.
Right.
Uh-huh.
He needs to be too.
so well, and then you gotta. God, what do you do?
All right. Okay,
Informational items.
we had 3 FOIAs. It was a hot month for FOIAs. Nothing that exciting. The student discipline reports in your packet. Board, remember, April 1st, 9 a.m., we will have a special board meeting. So the public knows, it is a closed session meeting that is allowable under OMA for self-evaluation practices and procedures. So the Illinois Association of School Boards will be here to facilitate the meeting, the closed session meeting of the board.
It'll be in here.
And it'll be, yep, here. Or that room. I mean, one of them. I've never had such a long list for media. It was kind of exciting as I was going through it, but really it comes down to there was a dog at Broadmeadow, and there were a lot of stories about that dog named Cooper. Broadmeadow, Amy Blomberg also is doing a program, has a program going on there where she was on a panel with ISB. There was an article about that. That actually got picked up by Education Week, which in my world is a big deal. And then Northview had Read Across America. Oh, I got interviewed about the tornadoes. So there was that. That's in there too. I didn't tell them I wasn't actually at work that day. They didn't run that in the newspaper, but I was with my mother. She was in the, remember? I know, but now you can all run it in the paper. All right. Information items continued. There is the outline of the family community engagement activities. I like to put that in there every now and then because our schools are doing a ton of activities for our parents and families and kids. And when we put them all on one list, we're on to 3 pages now for this year, which is pretty cool. Revised organizational chart. I've added our Director of Human Resources on there. That's the change. Roofs project planning, I'll come back to that. Summer programming schedule is in there. So we have summer school, we have extended school year for special ed, and we have elementary summer school and then Aider summer school. And the calendars are in the packet. Roofs project planning, I need to, for Mrs. Frericks, need to talk briefly about this. We're looking for guidance from the board, so kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down, on which way you want us to proceed on the 3 remaining roofs that we need to address. I say 3, it's 4. Broadmeadow is still under warranty. It's coming towards the end. Northview needs to be replaced soon. I would say very soon. Some of these heavy storms we've been getting, the tornado day, we had a lot of leaking at Northview.
Is that mainly the gym or is it other?
The gym, it's mostly the gym, yeah. And then Aider, so they're all at the end of their life cycle. And that, we had a presentation on that last time. So we have 2 routes that we can go. So East Lawn, we've already just approved tearing that off, putting it on, so we're done with that one. One route is traditional roof replacement. The rough estimate right now for replacing the roofs on those 4 schools is over $11 million. So we cannot do that all at once. That would be something we would have to do over the years. It's more expensive. Frankly, I don't know when we would accumulate that kind of money to get it done without having bonds, and we aren't out from under our current bonds until 2030, all right? But we could do it. We could make a decision that Northview needs to be done. Let's have Scott and Jenny start working on a plan and setting aside money, and we'll try to get Northview done in the next 2 to 3 years, okay? But then we've got 3 more buildings to do. The other option is the refurbishment option. And the rough estimate on that is $5 million. The cost savings comes from the technology that's used is not requiring a full tear off. It's requiring tear off of portions. So they evaluate the roof and determine which portions need to be replaced. And so they would tear it off, redo the insulation on those sections, and then they have a they call it a liquid membrane, but every time they hand it to me, it's solid. And it's this stuff they pour over the top of it that seals it once they've done the refurbishment. And that is warranted, it's in the packet, but 25 years on that. Which is as good as a tear-off roof in terms of the length on the warranty. It's new technology to me, so I kind of want to, anyway, it's new technology to me. And there are schools that are starting to do it. Thomasboro is doing it for a new section of their building. And then the high school has a proposal, their board has not yet approved it to do it on there. So it seems to be a new technology that's coming in. The benefit of it is it's $5 million. And then we would be able to put solar on it, which would be about an additional $1 million. And then because of all the federal rebates on solar right now, we would get enough in rebates to offset the cost of the solar and part of the roof, because you can include, if you're refurbishing the roof in order to do the solar, then you can offset costs that way. It seems very complicated to me. And you can tell which one I think we should do also. And then the energy savings on the solar also goes in towards paying for the roofs in the long run. So what we are looking for from the board is a consensus. Do we want to move forward with planning for traditional tear-off and replacement roof? Or do we want to move forward with refurbishment?
Yes. Refurbishment save money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Refurbishment?
Refurbishment.
Okay. Now, it is, after the last meeting, I did tell them to go ahead and start doing the, this was, remember they had a clawback, was that what it was called in there? Walkaway. So they may have already started since the last meeting, starting to evaluate the roofs. There is always a possibility they go up and they do the evaluation and say, it's a tear off, okay? I mean, they could, and there might be significant portions that would be tear off, but we don't have any significant leakage happening. Other than some of the problems we've been having in Northfield. Okay, that's good. I appreciate that. Obviously, you would still have to approve anything before we would spend any money, but we're not going to continue to look at tear-offs as an option. Okay.
Board and superintendent comments? You surely don't have anything more to say, do you? No.
They pay me per word.
Board, comments?
Made a lot of money tonight.
All right.
It's on a closed session?
Oh, sorry, I threatened to mention this last month, but April 21st and 22nd, they're doing House on Poop Corner at Ader. I don't know the time, I was trying to find it, but their Facebook page has a really handy weekly schedule of events, so I'd encourage you all to check that out, but that'll be coming up.
What is time start?
I couldn't hear you.
Playing Ader.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, April 21st and 22nd.
It's called Pooh Corner.
House on Poop Corner.
About Winnie
It's
the
Winnie the Pooh.
All right.
Yeah. Cute.
And you want to note in the minutes
I do.
that Mr. Johnson, good evening. No, you're okay. No, we just have to say the reason.
So, yeah. Next is closed session. And the reason for closed session is personnel, purchase, or lease of property.
I'll make the motion to go to closed session.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Katie Johnston,
Aye.
Diana Mendoza, Amy Pettit,
Aye.
Joe Robinson, Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
and John Brotherton, Odo Johnson.
And for the public, we do not have any action after closed session, so we're going to go ahead and stop the meeting for the public.
Thank you.
We can, and board, we can stay in here. As long as everybody goes.
Ready?
You want to just kind of
We'll just stay in here. You want to, I gotta turn it off.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean.
Keeps getting closer to Katie.